Isn't it fascinating how, even in the sometimes really over-the-top world of reality TV, little moments can hint at much bigger, more complex realities?
Oh, absolutely.
And Sister Wives, I mean, with all those years on air, definitely fix that
Oh,
bill.
sure.
So today, we're kind of going beyond just the surface level. We're doing a deep dive into some honestly really compelling insights that came out of a YouTube analysis.
Right, the one looking at Tamron Hall's recent conversation with Meri Brown.
Exactly. And this isn't just about like celebrity chatter. We're trying to understand the deeper currents within the Brown family, seen through the eyes of someone who actually spent quite a bit of time with them.
Yeah, we're digging into the analysis from without a crystal ball,
Mm.
pulling out the key observations, the connections they made after really dissecting that Tamron Hall interview with Meri. So our goal today, really, is for everyone listening to get a better handle on those underlying tensions and Meri's own perspective on, her experiences, especially as lit up by someone who had that repeated direct contact with the family over, what, several seasons?
Right, several seasons. Okay, so let's kick off with Tamron Hall's own experience then. What really struck me was her like genuine emotional connection she mentioned with the kids.
Hmm.
Hosting those tell-alls for 4 seasons, that's not just showing up for a job. She clearly built some bonds, and she was quite open that being let go, as she put it, from that role, it actually upset her.
And that's interesting to think about, isn't it? Because even though she was the host, sort of an observer, Tamron clearly formed real bonds, especially with the children.
Yeah.
It said something about how immersive that whole production environment must have been. And the analysis also highlights Tamron's pretty positive feelings towards Meri.
Right, which is maybe different from how some viewers saw Mary.
Exactly. It's a potentially valuable counterpoint to, the interpretations people might have made just based on the show's edits over the years.
Okay. And here's where it gets, I think, really interesting.
Right.
Tamron actually saw tension firsthand between Meri and Robyn Brown while they were filming.
Mm-hmm. Direct observation.
Yeah, this wasn't like secondhand gossip or fan theories. This was someone who was in the room during those moments.
Precisely. And that builds on this whole idea that what we see on screen can be, well, quite different from the day-to-day reality.
Absolutely.
It's worth mentioning, too, some earlier insights that the YouTube analysis brought up. Apparently, an advocate who worked with Meri years back,
Okay.
they found both her and Janelle to be the most, genuinely honest and down-to-earth of the wives.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and this same person reportedly didn't have quite the same positive vibe, let's say, with Christine or Robyn.
Wow. That really makes you think, doesn't it? How different people can perceive the same individuals.
And how those views might clash with the, carefully crafted personas we sometimes see on TV.
Absolutely. It just underscores that what we get through the reality TV lens is just one version, right? Shaped by editing, by what people choose to show.
Or are allowed to show.
Good point. Which brings us back to that central thing Tamron noticed, the dynamic between Meri and Robyn. Tamron even asked Meri about it directly, mentioned that unease she personally felt between them on set.
And Meri's response: "We talk when we need to."
So brief.
Right. Concise,
Yeah.
but it really seems to confirm Tamron's feeling, doesn't it? There's no warmth there, no hint of a close bond.
Not at all.
And this ties into some older rumors that YouTube analysis sort of resurfaced, specifically stuff that was swirling around the time of Kody and Meri's legal divorce.
Ah, yes. Those rumors. They were pretty intense, weren't they?
Yeah, we're talking about claims of, significant animosity from Robyn towards Meri.
Including actual name-calling, the analysis mentioned.
It mentioned the specific word bitch, yes,
Mm-hmm.
and this alleged desire from Robyn to not be seen as, quote, beneath Meri, who was, of course, the first legal wife.
Right, the original wife. That raises huge questions about the power dynamics in that family structure, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
If those older accounts have any truth to them, it suggests some deep-seated resentment.
Mm-hmm.
The analysis even brought up a reported ultimatum, allegedly from Robyn to Kody.
What was that?
Basically,
Yeah.
legally divorce Meri and marry her, Robyn, or she'd leave the family.
Wow. That's huge, if true.
It is. And then there were those alleged text messages that apparently surfaced back then, too.
Oh, yeah, I remember hearing about those. Supposedly between Robyn and a friend.
That's the report. And they apparently contained some really negative comments about Meri, even about Meri not deserving to have another child.
That's awful. And it creates such a stark contrast with how close Meri and Robyn often seemed, especially later on the show.
Exactly. It makes you seriously question the authenticity of those on-screen moments, doesn't it?
Yeah. It really does. The difference between the public face and these alleged private feelings and Tamron's observations.
Yeah, and Tamron also noted something else about the dynamic when filming. Her impression was that Meri would often kind of look towards Kody.
Like, for guidance, before answering questions.
That was Tamron's read on it, yeah. And the interpretation from the YouTube analysis.
Let me guess, Robyn's role in that.
Well, the analysis points out Robyn was often physically very close to Kody in those moments.
Right.
Suggesting maybe she was actively influencing Meri's answers. Or at least that her presence influenced them. Perhaps even acting as a subtle controller of what Meri said.
So Tamron felt Meri was almost speaking in code.
That's the phrase Tamron used. Possibly out of, fear of repercussions if she said what she really felt.
Yeah.
It paints a picture of a very controlled environment for Meri during those interviews.
It definitely suggests Meri might not have had, like, full autonomy to just speak her mind within the show's setup.
It seems that way. Now, shifting gears a bit, another really significant thing from Tamron's interview. Something that clearly took Tamron herself by surprise.
Was this about the divorce?
Exactly. Meri's statement about the divorce.
Right. Tamron seemed genuinely floored when Meri said the legal divorce was actually harder for her than the spiritual one.
Which directly contradicts what Meri had said before on Sister Wives, remember?
Yeah, she'd always implied that because they happened at the same time, they were kind of equally difficult.
This is a really critical point where the stories diverge. The without a crystal ball analysis leans into this, suggesting Meri probably didn't want that legal divorce.
And that it might have been pushed by Kody and Robyn.
That seems to be the implication. And Meri telling Tamron the legal split was so painful because she didn't want to divorce Kody, that strongly backs up this alternative view. It casts a whole new light on the narrative we saw on the show.
So the whole idea that Meri was somehow okay with it or driving it, maybe not so much.
Seems less likely based on this, yeah.
And what about her relationship with Kody now? Since the divorce. Doesn't sound great.
She described it as, quote, pretty non-existent.
Oof.
And she seemed really sad. Not just that the marriage ended, but that they couldn't even manage, like, an amicable separation afterwards.
She'd hoped for some kindness from him.
That's what she said. Hope for kindness, but described his responses as just dismissive, uncaring. Like, yep.
Wow.
Cold. And the analysis sort of broadens that point out, suggesting Kody might, have a pattern, struggling to be genuinely kind or supportive to people he's no longer actively with.
We've maybe seen hints of that with Janelle and Christine, too, haven't we?
You could argue that, yeah. And then there's that really sensitive topic of alleged unequal treatment within the family.
Oh, yes. Tamron brought that up.
She did. The idea that some family members reportedly viewed Meri as, well, less than because she had fewer children.
Only having Leon.
Right. And the analysis highlights this supposed resentment towards Meri getting an equal share of the family finances despite that, implying a belief that, well, maybe those with more kids deserve more resources.
Which is just awful. And Meri herself kind of validated that feeling, didn't she?
She did. She said she felt treated like she was less valuable because her body, quote, didn't work like theirs in terms of having more kids.
But she pushed back, right? Said she deserved equal treatment for the equal work and sacrifice.
Absolutely. She asserted she put in the work, made the contributions, and deserved equal respect. The analysis even loops back to Janelle's past issues with budgets.
Right, the money arguments.
And even comments reportedly made by some of Kody's kids, like McKelty, about Meri supposedly taking their money.
Gosh, that must have been incredibly painful. It really highlights this potential for a really damaging hierarchy, doesn't it? Based on fertility, of all things.
It does. The sacrifices Meri made, especially as the first wife, seemingly undervalued by some, based purely on that metric.
Unbelievable. Now, something else important. Meri mentioned she's still under contract.
Yes, that's a crucial piece here. She indicated she still has contractual obligations limiting what she can actually say publicly.
So the story might not be fully out yet.
That's the suggestion. She hinted that once these contracts expire, we might see a completely different, much more open Meri, and maybe others too.
That makes you wonder what else is still under wraps. It's kind of frustrating knowing these NDAs or whatever might be preventing the full picture.
It definitely suggests there are more layers, more personal stories that are still private because of these legal things, which in turn makes Tamron Hall's firsthand account even more valuable, right?
Because she saw things within those limitations.
Exactly. She was able to pick up on nuances.
Yeah, I mean, spending all that time with them over 4 seasons of tell-alls, Tamron had this unique chance to see the dynamics up close, much closer than most interviewers ever get.
She saw the subtle stuff, the cues that can tell you a lot.
Okay, so wrapping this up a bit, what we've really pulled out here is that Tamron's observations seem to back up these long-running rumors of serious tension between Meri and Robyn.
Right, suggesting a big gap between the on-screen show and the behind-the-scenes reality.
And Meri changing her story or clarifying her story up at the divorce, saying the legal part was harder. That throws serious shade on the narrative we got on the show.
Raises big questions, definitely.
Hmm.
And then the whole issue of unequal treatment, allegedly tied to how many kids she had.
Mm-hmm.
That paints a really concerning picture of how value was maybe measured in that family.
It really does. These insights just show how incredibly complex and honestly contradictory the whole sister-wives dynamic was, much more than the edited show could ever capture.
Makes you think about what else hasn't been said.
Totally. Which leads to maybe a final thought for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Considering all these revelations, what does this really tell us about reality TV itself?
Yeah.
How much are we seeing that's shaped by editing, by contracts, by the stories people feel they have to stick to?
That's a great question. And looking forward, what happens when those contracts do expire? What could the future hold for Meri, for the other former wives? Will we get those untold stories?
It definitely makes you think about the power dynamics still at play and all the stories potentially waiting to finally come out. Something to chew on.